Sorry.
He said, I was on my way to school, actually, and he said, did you want to skip school? I'll skip school, you know? And, I heard God saying to me, you know, you got to be ready at all times. And I just knew that this was something that I needed to be ready for. He said, are you nervous? No. But I got to tell you, when I was sitting there at the table, the room wasn't this full. But when I turned around, I said, my God. But just to, it is such an honor to be here, and I'm glad that I was chosen to be here. And like the brother was saying, that the enemy will try to destroy the message, because he does not want it to get heard. And there's no coincidence that those two young ladies had a car accident. You know, that's the enemy way of attacking us as good human beings. He will do that. But he just don't know who our God is, right? So I grew up in the city of Chicago, and my mother was one of the ones who I'd say was on the front line of the crack pandemic when it broke out. And I was about the age of 13, and I had little brothers, 2 of them, and I had an older brother on my father's side who had went to war. He had went to the army. And when he came back, he said, what the heck happened here? And it happened just that fast. My mother had fell into those drugs really bad, and I was a 13-year-old girl living in the ghetto of Chicago, and I had to survive. I had to make sure that I ate, and I had to make sure that my brothers ate. So I learned very fast and had to grow up really fast. I went to prison at the age of 18. I went to jail the first time at the age of 16. Thought it was 17, but it was 16. I learned how to prostitute. It was one of my ways of maintaining food for me and my little brothers. So I learned that very quickly. And then I started getting arrested for prostitution, and I started to go to jail. My mother started to get in trouble with DCFS, and that's what they call the system for kids in Chicago. And I was at that age where I was rebellious. I wasn't listening to anybody. I was an angry kid. My mom was on drugs. Her husband was there, but her husband was not my father. So my father was absent, and my mother's husband was an absent father to me. So I didn't have that peace. So there was no support there. So I started to go to jail, and when I started to go into these jails, there was a whole different type of atmosphere for me. It was a very scary thing at that age. I remember going to Cook County Jail, and I remember coming into the doors, and I remember them saying, on the new, you better get in those showers, and all this kind of stuff. So that was a very traumatic thing for me. But I got into the showers or whatever. But what I also got is at night I would get a guard that came into my room who wanted to have sex with me. And that right there was a very traumatic experience for me. And I felt that I had no other choice but to give this guard what he wanted. I then started to get into drugs, and I struggled with drugs from the age of 18 until now, on and off. But God. If it had not been for God, all the things that I have been through in my life, I wouldn't be able to stand here today and to tell you this story. So I went to jail on and off for years, and I decided to get clean. When I first did my first prison term, I just had my daughter, Sierra, and they put a warrant out for my arrest. I went to jail for that warrant, and they put me in prison in Chicago. And I think my baby was about a month old. So that's another piece that happens when women go to jail. These children that they have also suffer. After all of these pieces happened to me, after I came out of prison and started to get my life back, I decided that I was going to get clean. And my ex-husband was in the program of NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and he showed me some things about how to live a clean life, how to live all over again, because I didn't know any of those things. I had went through being raped and gangbanging and all these other things that were traumatic events for me with no intervention though. And that was the piece that had been missing, because I didn't know what intervention was. Communities were not coming together to help pull you out of this, because one thing that I do know now is that it takes a village to raise a child, even just one human being, an adult. Because still at the age of 39 today, I do not know how to live, but I'm learning. And it takes a community. When I moved to Madison in 2002, I had been clean for 7 years. While I was, that was a huge milestone for me. The recovery life was very different than it was in Chicago, because the struggles are different, I think. So when I came here and I went to my first meeting, coming from Chicago where it was rough at, you had these people, it was like going to church. It was like, but you're at a meeting, but it was like going to church. But when I came here, it was like, oh my gosh, all these white people. I don't think that they understand me. They don't know the life that I live, you know. And it was very unwelcoming also. Going to meetings, so I gave up on going to meetings. I didn't know that I had all these behaviors that I needed to change in order to stay clean and sober, right? But at the same time, I didn't know how to connect with white people, let alone the people in my community. I always was curious about them, but it was always this pushback, you know, you're not my kind, I really don't want to deal with you, you know what I'm saying? So it's very uncomfortable for me living in my skin also. So what I did was, I started to isolate. And I fell back into using drugs. And then I started getting something, what you call a ticket here. And I said, well, what the heck is a ticket? I said, you can only give cars tickets? I've never had heard of it before. So what it did for me was, I started getting all these tickets because of the behaviors that I had, and I didn't know how to change them. Heck, I didn't even know that I had them. But these tickets landed me in jail. And every time I would get pulled over by a police officer or whatever, I had a warrant. And it was like, my gosh, how do I get myself out of this mess? Going to jail here was also very traumatic because it affected me, it affected my kids, the drugs, the way I was treated in jail. You know, this is a really small town because it was, as I look around the room and when I came here, there's actually somebody in this room who had to deal with my kids. And I just want to thank you, Barbie, because she helped take care of my kids. And it takes a community. It takes people like you and me to help each other because these kids get left behind. And what do they do? Who's reuniting these kids with families? If it had not been for her, my daughter probably wouldn't even be in college today. It's such a blessing to have you a part of my kids growing up because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it by myself. I didn't know how. But God, you know, the water is not clean in jail. You have no confidentiality in jail. This last time that I went to jail, there was the nurse. She's sitting in a room. I'm standing on the outside of this room trying to get processed into jail. And she wants to know all about my medical history. And I'm saying to her, well, all these people are here. I'm not comfortable with sharing all this information because you had all these inmates that were getting processed too. And there's some things in my medical history that I don't want to expose to everybody. So I got punished for that. The sheriff came and said, you know what? If you're not going to give her, I said, I will give it to her, but I would like to do it in privacy. I said, I'll even sign a release. She can get it from my doctor. No problem. But no, I was punished for that. That sheriff took me and threw me in solitary confinement because I would not share my medical information. And I stayed there the duration of my jail stay until the judge released me. I didn't even get a phone call to be able to call my family. And that was the punishment for her. And every so often they would come, are you ready to talk now? No, I'm not. Are you ready to? I am not going to share my personal information with everyone. And this is, I believe, of a way for them to break me.
That's right.
That's right.
I remember being in jail, and you have a cup. Everybody has their own personal cup. And I left my cup at my bunk, and it was time for count. Because I forgot my cup, I was put on bed restriction for the next 2 days. And I couldn't come off of my bunk. And I had to stay there, unless I had to use the bathroom or it was time to eat. I have friends who have died in prison because they were not checked on. They were left there in their vomit, and you know, you have, because when you talk about people, women and men going to jail, why are they going to jail? What's the underlying issues that I hear? And I know for me, a lot of it was being in poverty, not being able to provide for my family, or it was some sort of drug that I was addicted to. And mainly people of color get treated like hell in these places. And they use our hands to do their work. And there's still today building this country on the hands of us. And some of my kids' fathers go to jail and they get paid a certain amount of money a month, a small amount. The most I've heard of was like $16, I think. And you're talking about sewing, doing license plates. You're doing all this professional work that they have you doing, and you're getting paid. This is slavery.
Yeah.
And this is how they get away with it. So any little thing and every little thing that they could find fault in us, it could land us very real in prison. And it's a business. It's not to help us, because where is the intervention at? You know, when I came into this room on today, I felt so much love, and it was all different kind of colors, and I thought to myself, I said, wow, this is what it's about. This is because it takes all of us, every color, every nationality, to overcome this racial thing that's going on. It takes us all to do this, and to love on each other, and to help build each other up. Because if it wasn't for Moses, I believe, I wouldn't have got changed. And I tell you, when I call him, he's there for me. I went back to school. I'm getting my high school diploma. For me, I didn't think I could do that. I dropped out of school in the 7th grade. But God. James took me over to the Odyssey program. And when I walked into that room, I said, wow. You know, so it takes for us to teach each other and to love on each other. And I'm so grateful that I had the honor to be here. And if I had to do it all over again, I would. And I love you all. Thanks for having me.
Before she knew that she was having that accident, she sent us her PowerPoint. So we're going to share, these are some facts and figures, I believe, about women in Wisconsin. Did you want to say something?
No, if they had questions, I would.
Okay. And you brought up solitary confinement, and so a little later we'll hear a little bit from Talib about a campaign he is on solitary.
Yeah, let's do questions. Let's do questions.
You want? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you win. Hey,
Okay.
we're family. My brothers have spoken.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's time for questions for Veronica or anything else. I know some people in the room maybe have some things that they might want to share about this too.
Okay, Veronica, what's your support system here in Madison? As far as the family, were your kids able, and
Okay.
so
Okay, so I have my kids, thank God for that. My kids, my church family. I have a peer supporter who's Jane. I have a sponsor, her name is Edwina. And I have a whole fellowship of men and women who are helping each other to stay off drugs. I have the NA program
And so I had been up against the warden before.
Okay.
I mean, I've talked to the warden, and I know my son went to Oshkosh Tech, and he talked for a lot of people. So people say, Brad, what should I say? You know, because he's not gonna back down. If I'm not yelling at you, we're talking. You don't have any right. And he would get written up and say, you know, go to your bed and go to this. And he would also tell me, Mom, call this person, Mom, call that person. I would call for anybody in this. I mean, right is right, wrong is wrong. Their parents might not have a voice to stand up.
Right.
I've been standing up for him since he was a little boy, on the football field, on the basketball court. I'm not going.
I have a question, so what was it
Up
that
here.
turned you
Beth.
around?
Beth.
What?
Oh, she got the mic. Oh.
We'll do you first.
Oh, somebody else had the mic, I'm sorry.
That's your question.
Oh, I have the mic now, okay, so, I didn't know if it was you. Yeah, so my question is, you know, when you first came to town and you found that there was no support, and then you got drugged down again, how did you correct that when you got out the last time? How'd you get on the path that you're on now?
I had a spiritual awakening on June 24th. I was over on the south side. I had slept in the park that night, and I have a 4-year-old who's with my cousin through a previous marriage, but she's been helping out with him. And I woke up in the park, and I heard some kids calling out my son's name, and his name is Cordier. And I said, Lord, please, I know that's not my son. And when I got up, it was my son. So my son was in the park that day having recess with his classmates. And I was able to play with him during that recess. And I just said, Lord, I gotta do something. And I had no idea where I was going or any of that. And I went to walk through MATC's parking lot where I go to school now, and a woman reached her hand out to me and she began to pray.
Wow.
And she said, baby, where's your family at? And whenever I've gotten in that position, I was never the type to really like reach out. I always, you know, went into a shell. But this time around, and because I realized I have no clue on how to do this, so I have to allow some other people to pray for me and to help me through this. So she prayed for me. She, her friend Miss B got me into the Jackson Crawford Recovery House. That day I was there within an hour. And I've been,
I just want to say thank you for your vulnerability, for your authenticity, for your openness. You are a powerful witness to change. And we're just going to keep you lifted in prayer. And my question is about spiritual prayer, about prayer, because you mentioned that when you went to your recovery groups, they were like church. And then here you're a member of End Times. But this woman prayed for you in the park. Okay, one of the things that people don't necessarily understand is a connection between worship and spiritual care and recovery in the Black community. And I'd like you to talk to us about that. Amen.
okay. I don't think that if I didn't know who God was, I don't think that I would have made it this far. I had some exposure to who God was already, and I had already I knew about, like the brother was speaking about, how the enemy will attack you, and I knew that my life was up under attack. But this time, when that woman reached out to her hand to me, her name was Miss Eula Jackson. When Eula reached her hand out to me and began to pray with me, I was able to touch and agree with her. And there was another person, Miss B, who was able to touch and agree. The same neighborhood that I destroyed myself in the South Side, is where God sent me back to get better. And that's the African American community. it's so very, very, very hard to get up when you fall. I don't mean just get up physically, but get up spiritually. And it's so hard because you're just down so far. And sometimes when you're down, people will put their foot on your neck and kick you down. And just as you got people praying for you, there's people also praying against you. And I think when all of this happened, God had already set this all up for me. Because I have to go to social services right there on the south side. I woke up in the park that day on the south side. My peer support specialist is right there on the south side. My school is right there on the south side. The meetings that I go to is right there on the south side. So I had to go back. I had to go back, but God placed all the support in these areas for me to be able to walk through it again, to get the help that I needed. Because sometimes we are afraid of a lot of things, but I guess God said, no, not this time. You're going to face these fears. And what are they about? You're going to face them. And that's what I do on a daily basis, is that I'm learning how to face my fears and to overcome them. And to advocate for myself, and if I can for other people, even though I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but hey, this is what worked for me. So let me show you what I did. You know, so, yeah.
For the process of time, we're just gonna run over this PowerPoint real quick.